Okay, listen closely. What I'm about to show you, this isn't a history lesson. This is derived from classified material. This is an active briefing. I need your undivided attention.
It all started with a ghost in the machine. A deep space thermal imaging satellite, one of ours, tasked with watching the polar ice. Well, it flagged a reading that just shouldn't have been possible. A signal that, according to everything we knew, simply could not exist.
And the first thing that was just wrong was where it was. This wasn't some geothermal vent near a volcano. No, this was deep in the Antarctic interior, buried under 2 miles of solid ice, where the temperature is a constant, crushing -50 degrees Celsius. And yet, there was a heat signature, and it was moving.
At first, the analysts figured it was a glitch, an equipment malfunction, but the signal was still there on the next pass, and the next. When they finally isolated the signal, they found a pulse, a rhythmic bloom of heat that would fade and then return. And it was slow, incredibly slow, 7 beats per minute. There was no denying it. It was the rhythm of a heart.
So this wasn't just some new discovery, it was an impossibility. Something was alive down there, and all the preliminary data suggested it was absolutely massive.
When I say massive, I mean the thermal footprint was the size of a city block, and it wasn't sitting still. Over 72 hours, we tracked it moving on a slow, deliberate path, deeper under the ice shelf. This wasn't a geological feature. This thing was active. Was it hibernating? Hunting? We had no clue.
Which brings us to the one question that was terrifying everyone. How? How could anything survive down there? The pressure alone is over 300 times what it is at sea level. The darkness is absolute. The cold is beyond comprehension. What kind of life could possibly exist in those conditions?
To even try and wrap their heads around it, the science teams had to look at the deepest, most hostile places on our own planet just to find a starting point.
Turns out, there's a name for this kind of life. Pisophiles. The name comes from a Greek word meaning to press. And these are organisms that don't just survive under immense pressure, they require it. It's fundamental to their very existence.
We've seen them before, in places like the Mariana Trench. We're talking about bacteria, archaea, tiny single-celled organisms that thrive under pressure that can exceed 16,000 pounds per square inch. They're amazing, they're tough as nails, and they are, without exception, microscopic.
And this is where the science we understood completely broke down and the horror began. Our biology books said this kind of life had to be microbial. But the data from that satellite? That wasn't a microbe. It was a macroorganism on a scale that we had no framework for.
Obviously, they had to see it. So a black-budget multinational mission was scrambled. The objective? Establish visual contact. Get eyes on whatever was down there with that 7-beat-per-minute pulse. The code name for the operation was Deep Look.
They used a thermal drill to melt a narrow shaft 2 miles straight down. It took weeks. When they finally broke through, they found themselves in a vast subglacial cavern. The pressure and temperature readings were off the charts, but they were stable. So they started lowering an armored camera on a fiber optic cable. For hours, it was just darkness and rock. And then, the thermal sensor spiked. The object was directly below them.
That was the last clear transmission we got from the mission lead, Dr. Eris Thorne. On the feed, we saw movement, a texture like weathered rock, shifting. Then a vast, pale surface filled the entire camera view. A circle opened in that surface, revealing a pupil so black it felt endless. It gave a slow, lazy blink, the blink of something that had been woken up after eons.
And then, nothing. The fiber optic camera went dead. Audio, video, telemetry, all of it, gone. At the exact same moment, the surface camp's generator failed and all communications were cut. A localized seismic tremor was detected at the drill site moments later. The entire operation was just wiped off the map.
And just like that, the program was buried. The files were sealed. The entire event was wiped clean from every official record.
Now, this is the part you really need to understand. The silence that followed wasn't an accident, it was a command decision.
Inside the intelligence community, they gave it a name. It wasn't the anomaly or the organism. They called it Lithic Terror. Lithic meaning of stone. A terror made of living rock. That designation alone tells you they knew exactly what they'd found.
publicly, oh, a cover story was ready in hours. It was a tragic but explainable accident. A sudden, unpredictable seismic event compromised the research station. A terrible loss, all due to the inherent dangers of Antarctic exploration. It was neat, it was clean, and it was a complete lie.
The truth is that humanity made first contact. Not in the stars, but deep within our own planet. And what we found was so ancient, so vast, and so utterly terrifying that those in power made a decision for all of us. No one could ever know. They buried the truth back under 2 miles of ice.
Which brings us to right now. Why this briefing? Why break the silence after all this time?
Because the ice is melting. It's melting faster than any of their models ever predicted. The insulating blanket that has kept the Lithic Terror dormant for millennia is getting thinner by the day. This isn't a story from the past. It's a warning about what's coming.
The last confirmed data we have is years old. The last thing we heard was a heartbeat of 7 beats per minute. Has it quickened? Is it still moving? Is it waking up? We buried a monster, and now the ground is thawing. The only question left is, what happens when it breaks the surface?